Chapter 7. Gideon's Army of 300. Then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and all the people who were with him, rose up early and encamped beside the spring of Harod, and the camp of Midian was on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh in the valley. Yahweh said to Gideon,
"The people who are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, 'My own hand has saved me.' Now therefore, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, 'Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead.'
22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. Yahweh said to Gideon,
"The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. It shall be, that of whom I tell you, this shall go with you, the same shall go with you. And of whoever I tell you, this shall not go with you, the same shall not go."
So he brought down the people to the water. And Yahweh said to Gideon,
"Everyone who laps of the water with his tongue, like a dog laps, you shall set him by himself. Likewise, everyone who bows down on his knees to drink."
The number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down on their knees to drink water. Yahweh said to Gideon,
"By the 300 men who lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, each to his own place."
So the people took food in their hand, and their trumpets, and he sent all the men of Israel, every man to his tent, but retained the 300 men, and the camp of Midian was beneath him in the valley. Gideon's Dream. It happened the same night that Yahweh said to him,
"Arise, go down into the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down, go with Purah, your servant, down to the camp, and you shall hear what they say, and afterward your hands will be strengthened to go down into the camp."
Then he went down with Purah his servant to the outermost part of the armed men who were in the camp, the Midianites and the Amalekites, and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like locusts for multitude, and their camels were without number, as the sand which is on the seashore for multitude. When Gideon had come, behold, there was a man telling a dream to his fellow. And he said, "Behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and came to the tent, and struck it so that it fell, and turned it upside down, so that the tent lay flat." His fellow answered, "This is nothing other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. God has delivered Midian into his hand, with all the army." Gideon defeats Midian. It was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, that he worshipped, and he returned into the camp of Israel, and said, "Arise, for Yahweh has delivered the army of Midian into your hand." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put into the hands of all of them trumpets and empty pitchers with torches within the pitchers. He said to them, "Watch me, and do likewise. Behold, when I come to the outermost part of the camp, It shall be that, as I do, so you shall do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then blow the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and shout, For Yahweh and for Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outermost part of the camp, in the beginning of the middle watch, when they had but newly set the watch. And they blew the trumpets, and broke in pieces the pitchers that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets, and broke the pitchers, and held the torches in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands with which to blow. And they shouted, The sword of Yahweh and of Gideon. They stood every man in his place around the camp, and all the army ran, and they shouted and put them to flight. They blew the 300 trumpets, and Yahweh set every man's sword against his fellow, and against all the army. And the army fled as far as Bethshittah, toward Zerah, as far as the border of Abel-Meholah, by Tabbath. The men of Israel were gathered together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after Midian. Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, Come down against Midian, and take before them the waters, as far as Bethbara, even the Jordan. So all the men of Ephraim were gathered together, and took the waters as far as Bethbara, even the Jordan. They took the 2 princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeeb, and they killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeeb they killed at the winepress of Zeeb, and pursued Midian. And they brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon beyond the Jordan. Chapter 8. Gideon defeats Zebah and Zalmunna. The men of Ephraim said to him, Why have you treated us this way, that you didn't call us when you went to fight with Midian? They rebuked him sharply. He said to them, What have I now done in comparison with you? Isn't the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hand the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeeb. What was I able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger was abated toward him, when he had said that. Gideon came to the Jordan, and passed over, he and the 300 men who were with him, faint, yet pursuing. He said to the men of Succoth, Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are faint, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. The princes of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? Gideon said, Therefore, when Yahweh has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. He went up there to Penuel, and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. He spoke also to the men of Penuel, saying, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their armies with them, about 15,000 men, all who were left of all the army of the children of the east. For there fell 120,000 men who drew sword. Gideon went up by the way of those who lived in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and struck the army, for the army was secure. Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued after them, and he took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and confused all the army. Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from the battle, from the ascent of Heres. He caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him. And he described for him the princes of Succoth, and its elders, 77 men. he came to the men of Succoth and said, See Zebah and Zalmunna, concerning whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are weary? He took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. He broke down the tower of Penuel, and killed the men of the city. Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, What kind of men were they whom you killed at Tabor? They answered, They were like you. Each one resembled the children of a king. He said, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As Yahweh lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you. He said to Jether, his firstborn, Get up and kill them. But the youth didn't draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was yet a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise and fall on us, for as the man is, so is his strength. Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescents that were on their camels' necks. Gideon's ephod. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, both you and your son's son also, for you have saved us out of the hand of Midian. Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. Yahweh shall rule over you. Gideon said to them, I would make a request of you, that you would give me every man the earrings of his spoil. For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. They answered, We will willingly give them. They spread a garment, and every man threw the earrings of his spoil into it. The weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescents and the pendants and the purple clothing that was on the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were about their camels' necks. Gideon made an ephod of it, and put it in his city, even in Ophrah, and all Israel played the prostitute after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his house. 40 years of peace. So Midian was subdued before the children of Israel, and they lifted up their heads no more. The land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and lived in his own house. Gideon had 70 sons conceived from his body, for he had many wives. His concubine, who was in Shechem, she also bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech. Gideon's death. Gideon, the son of Joash, died in a good old age, and was buried in the tomb of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. It happened, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again, and played the prostitute after the Baals, and made Baal-berith their god. The children of Israel didn't remember Yahweh their God, who had delivered them out of the hand of all their enemies on every side. Neither did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had shown to Israel.